139 new objects in our solar system, finding the missing link in black holes, and it'll be a Supermoon Wednesday. It's Tuesday, April 7, 2020, day 16 of lockdown here in Australia. Let's talk some science.
Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is Talking Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
Incredible to think, day 16 of lockdown and still another couple of months to go. Dr. Brad Tucker, happy Quarantine Tuesday.
Yeah, look, I would say the days are flying by, but they're really not. Yeah, we're managing. It is April. We just did daylight savings, which is exciting. So, you know, time it is chugging through, as we say.
Yeah, the rest of the East Coast got back an hour that I don't think they wanted.
No, look, I was happy for someone to take, lose 3 months, to be honest. I'm happy to jump straight to July.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
I was hoping it would work like that this year, but apparently not.
Unfortunately not, no.
No.
Well, you can find Dr. Brad Tucker on Twitter at btucker22, on Facebook, Dr. Brad Tucker. There are some very cool things coming up that we're going to talk about in a Monday show in a couple of weeks' time, Brad, which is very exciting. But people should be jumping on your socials right now, liking, following you to get the latest there. You can find me on Twitter at Miramat86. Search for Trekzone across social media. And, of course, we're doing the podcast thing on your favourite podcast library, wherever that might be. Apple Podcasts, that's what they're called. Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all that sort of stuff. Brad, let's dive into the headlines.
Talking Science headlines.
And the first one up is talking about coronavirus. NASA is looking at how it can help in the current situation.
Yeah, it's trying to find ways of, as people are thinking of what they can do. They've already left their supercomputers to doctors looking at vaccines, and trying to do a lot of the analysis a lot quicker because they're not being used, but also said, hey, is there any creative things we can look at into PPE, which is in shortage, or respirators? They have to create lightweight technical solutions for space travel. Can they repurpose them here on Earth? So I think a very good way of using free brain power.
And it was very cool. I was watching a video from the Tesla engineers. They're sort of doing the same thing as well. In their case, they're pulling car parts out of production vehicles and going, how can we create a respirator here with parts that we already have? So there's a lot of industry and a lot of ingenuity going into solving this current global crisis.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing you always like to see. And, we've talked about it before. One of the great things about doing space is you get these very challenging questions. So you think of challenging, innovative solutions, and that's what they're hoping here.
And as we say in the entertainment industry, the show must go on. And for the International Space Station, that is also true. 2 astronauts are heading up there on Thursday.
That's right. The schedule was planned. They were already in quarantine. They were ready to go. So they will be going up to join the current astronauts on board the space station. And then on the 17th, Christina Koch and the other astronaut, the cosmonaut, will kind of cycle back down. So they'll be leaving their earthly problems for probably currently the safest guaranteed corona-free place you could possibly get to.
Talking Science, stories of the week.
Alrighty, Brad. Well, for our deep dive audience who catch the full in-depth chats about stories of the week on Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays, those folks will be listening in on this one on the day. But for our main show audience here on Tuesday, tomorrow is going to be a supermoon. What exactly is a supermoon, Brad?
So look, a supermoon is really a perigee-Siggy moon. Now that is a mouthful.
Is it from Krypton? This is what I want to know.
No, unfortunately. It's your ordinary moon, just a bit closer. So ultimately, everything in space is not a perfect circle in its orbit. So we think of the moon going around us in a circle, the Earth going around the sun in a circle, and it's actually not right. They're a bit elliptical. So in fact, the orbit of the moon varies by about 50,000 kilometers. So sometimes it's closer, what we call it perigee. So perigee is a point when the moon is in close orbit around the Earth. We also can use perigee for describing exoplanets going around other stars. And if it's a bit closer, and it happens to be an asygy, so that's in a line essentially. So the sun, Earth, and moon all line up. We get a full moon. So we're having a full moon when the moon is a bit closer. So technically it's a bit closer and a bit brighter on Wednesday.
Alrighty, Brad. Well, speaking of fainter things in the sky, and unbelievably, 139 new objects were out there waiting to be discovered, and they have been by astronomers out around past Pluto, I reckon, and by the Oort cloud.
Yeah, we've talked about the small things out there. We talked about Arakoth a few months ago when the first data was processed of it. And using a telescope and camera in Chile, one that I use to find exploding stars and black holes, they're able to search for the edge of our solar system and find 139 what we call trans-Newtonian objects. So these are objects past the orbit of Neptune. Doesn't necessarily mean they're dwarf planets. We just designate this area as past Neptune as this kind of different region of space, the Here Be Dragons area, because we're really trying to figure out what's going on out there.
And our last story of the week this week, Brad, is it's the story of Goldilocks. I think in terms of black holes, there's a mummy one, there's a daddy one, and now we found the kid one. Although we probably found the kid one and the dad one, and now we found the mum one.
Well, I really call this the teenager phase, right? We've had the adults, which are the supermassive black holes, the big black holes in the center of our galaxies. We've had the children, what we call the stellar mass black holes. These are when stars explode, they produce something only 10 to 30 or 40 or 50 times the mass of our sun. And we've seen those only, yeah. And we've seen those collide and felt it. But how do you get from the small ones to the really big ones? Well, the theory was the small ones eventually keep colliding and growing and growing and growing to get the big ones. So those medium-sized ones should grow like the teenagers. They're growing very awkwardly. You don't really want to deal with them, but you need them just to go through it as quickly as possible to get to the big ones, to the adult phase. And so they've been a bit tricky to find because the supermassive black holes, we always find them in the center of galaxies, and they're destroying stars or gas, and they give off signs they exist. The small ones collide relatively nearby, and we can feel their gravitational waves. It's kind of hard to detect these intermediate mass black holes, but space telescopes think they have found one.
Fantastic, Brad. Well, as I say every week, and it holds true every week, it is fun to pick apart the stories of the week with you here on Talkin Science. Really appreciate your time, and stay safe, be well, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds good.